Hello everyone, and a very, very warm welcome to Sydney Motorsport Park for round 10 of Apex Rear Wing's 7th season in the Caterhams. The championship has already been wrapped up from the standpoint of first position, with Ziras clinching the title a couple of rounds ago, but there are still a number of positions up for grabs. My name's Stairs, and it is my pleasure to welcome Matt Dunlop to the commentary box. How are you, Matty?
I'm good, Stairs. Always good to catch up with you again, and it's going to be a great race to watch today. Obviously, like you said, the championship is wrapped up with Ziras on absolutely dominating form. Indeed, he has taken out the record for the most consecutive wins, but with those sort of stakes, you feel like a lot of these drivers, especially Ziras, have nothing left to lose, so they're going to go all out and give us an entertaining scrap for today, I think.
Absolutely, I would echo those sentiments entirely. Some interesting shenanigans going on with the practice session and setups being shared, so it looks like the guys are kind of in a bit of party mode, but as I mentioned before, not all the positions settled. Here is a recap of the point situation as they stand right now, with Ziras leading the way well over 100 and about 148 points ahead of Brenton Foley there. Berto in third, Goofball Antics and Sam Smith, that's a pretty close battle, and so too Madbird and Decimage over 6th and 7th place. So those two will be, those four guys will be fairly eagerly watching their positions and the guys that they're up against. So it'll be interesting to see how those battles play out. Turning our attention, of course, to the race information, and there is the first 5 rounds that we did last year. It's gone by in quite a flash, starting in November on the 14th at Curitiba, winding our way all through these fantastic circuits to finish here on the 13th of February at Sydney Motorsport Park. Here is the details of the races tonight. 2 12-lappers to get us going for a full distance of 108 laps. So we'll turn our attention to Automobilista, and the practice session has timed down to 0. Just a couple of cars left on track, but no more times will be set. Ziras the fastest man by just over a tenth and a half over Brenton Foley.
So up next now is qualifying. And as we've run through qualifying for the whole of the ARW Season 7, it's a top 10 shootout format. Sorry, not a top 10 shootout, it's an everyone shootout format. Sorry, I'm just using lining up shootout with the top 10 phrase. But every single driver will go out and set 1 flying lap and 1 flying lap only, and that will determine their place on the grid. It definitely ensures that the makes it nice and thrilling, especially when you have drivers who get all a little bit mixed up in their practice results, because the starting order of the top 10 the starting order of the shootout is based on practice results. So you might have some guys getting out there trying to smash 8 lap times as quick as they can. Other guys might have issues in practice, so you may have people all over the place. But we will be starting with Nether in this qualifying session. He'll be looking to get a good result. He has qualified 4th at the last event in Zandvoort. That was a great result for him. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to capitalise with the DNS and the DNF. He's got a best result so far this season of a 4th place finish at Nagaro earlier in the season. He'll be looking to see if he can do something similar today, Stairs.
He absolutely will, and Nether, of course, we do these shootouts, as you say, top 10, actually a top 11 shootout for us, with the reverse order to which they finished in practice. Now, the screen I'm looking at has Tyrrell finishing the practice session in 11th place rather than Nether, so I'm wondering whether Tyrrell has either decided to forego his qualifying lap, or whether my timing screens may well be wrong. But anyway, that's what we're looking at the moment.
Well, I'm not too sure, because Nether is out on the track at the moment doing his out lap, and Tyrrell is just making his way towards the end of the pit lane. So it could just be a matter of a simple mix-up. He has the green light, but he is waiting at the end of the pit lane. So I think it'll just be a matter of Nether setting his lap first. At the moment, he's still a fair distance around the track. I think he's floating around turn 4, turn 5, that sort of area, past the new development that was happening since 2012 when this track was redeveloped. So this is Sydney Motorsport Park, also known as Eastern Creek, as you may know it back in the day. It was built in 1990, and as you can see by the large runoffs, it was originally built for motorbike racing, and it did host a lot of superbike racing, and it did host the MotoGP, or the World Championship as it was known, until 1997 when it went back to Phillip Island. And now it is used for plenty of domestic championships, including supercars, and everything else you can basically see racing on Australia at the moment. And since 2012, it has been known as the Sydney Motorsport Park, although it's still pretty much the exact same track layout-wise as Nethers goes through turn 11 onto the big main straight, heading down towards turn 1, which is a very fast left-hand steady-state corner, which will be testing drivers a lot today.
And if you are watching along, just apologies for the choppy broadcast. We're just having a couple of issues with our bit rate at the moment, which we will endeavour to try and fix prior to the race getting underway. Unfortunately, it looks like it's creating a bit of a choppy frame rate, so bear with us. We will try and endeavour to get that fixed. But yes, Nether starting his lap looks pretty good so far. He would be the first to admit he's not performed as well as he probably would have liked to in this Caterhams season. He's a bit of an up and down driver. I think sometimes he just likes the car to be under him. 32.3 for the first sector. Some cars suit his driving style and some don't. He did nearly get a podium at Circuit Paul Armagnac a few weeks ago, but ended up 4th after relinquishing that 3rd place on the final corner of the race. But apart from that, it was a stunning race. Apart from that, I'd say the season probably just hasn't gone to plan for him.
I think so, yeah. It doesn't seem to be a big fan of these Caterhams, but he does seem to have some definite favourite tracks. Like he said, Nagaro, he had some great results there. He qualified very well at Zandvoort and he had issues which were out of his control. Otherwise, he would have been in for a great result. So at the moment, he's down a little bit. He did have a couple of mistakes and slides I've seen throughout this lap. I think he'll be aiming for about a 1:41 or a 1:40 is about the benchmark that we were seeing in practice. Not sure how close he'll get. I didn't quite catch that last sector split, but he's heading down to the finish line now. We'll be able to see whereabouts he is on par with those practice times. I think he'll be getting pretty close.
So towards the line now, there comes the first benchmark in this qualifying session. It's a 41.9, and that's not too bad. We've saw that the front runners were running in the 39s and 38s, but that's a decent banker lap.
So forgot to mention, has missed a couple of races, couple of events this season. But Tyrrell only joined as of Guapore. Since then, he's been floating around 12th, 11th, 10th position in race finishes. Obviously, he's a newbie to the series. 10th was his best race finish at the second race at Nagaro, but he is definitely feeling like he's improving race after race, especially in qualifying pace. So we'll have to see how he goes here.
Exactly right. It's normally Tyrrell we see starting off these qualifying shootouts, but not so today for reasons unknown to us. But 1.7 seconds down on the first sector. It doesn't look like he's going to be troubling the time of Nether for the time being, but of course he is fairly new to sim racing, so this is all a learning experience for him.
Absolutely. One thing you'll have to be wary of, as with all other drivers today, they'll have to be wary of the marbles on this track, because as you can see, they are quite prominent through some of those corners. And with a lot of passing opportunities, a lot of drivers will be finding themselves on the outside line more often than they like, whether they're attacking or defending. And if you get caught in those marbles at the wrong time, it's not going to be very good for your car's grip.
Not at all. 3 seconds down to the second sector split. 1:16.1 the timer stopped at. And just this final sequence of corners to go through for Tyrrell. Huge amount of understeer going in to turn 10 there. Thing just did not want to go. He was full lock to the left, and the thing went straight on. So that will have cost him a bit of time. As he comes towards the line, let's see. He probably would have lost a bit further time to Nether, and it's down to 3.7 seconds to slot him in just behind Nether as Madbird starts his lap.
Interesting to see Madbird this far down the starting order. He's been quite good, normally floating around the midfield, but he will be starting from 9th, I believe, in terms of practice pace. Was his practice result 9th place? He should be able to make his way up, I'd like to believe, because he's had some quite good results throughout this season so far, including a best result of 3rd at the first race in Place City. Most of the time he's been getting a lot of 4th and 5th places as well, so he's just been scraping the edge of the podium. So we could see a pretty big upset. He's already up just slightly though, just a smidge under 0.02 of a second. So it's negligible, but he is in the lead.
I wonder if he was just sandbagging a little bit in that practice session. He was up there early on in the session, but as the track gripped up, he didn't continue to pump in the fast laps. He's only 1 point adrift, or 1 point ahead, I should say, of Decimage, so perhaps trying to lull his opposition into a bit of a false sense of security. He hasn't traditionally gone that well in qualifying. He's had a couple of incidents in qualifying that have forced him to start further back than he probably would have liked to. So maybe he's just trying to take the pressure off himself by getting an early lap in the qualifying session. Our third runner, 6/10 up on Nether's time so far.
Well, judging by that sector split, I think he might be right about the sandbagging. That's quite a big margin, but he has understeered the same as Tyrrell just did, and I saw a few guys doing that in practice actually, so that might become a common issue throughout this qualifying session, and indeed throughout the race. He's peeled onto the home straight now. On the run down to the finish line, he's still looking to be up. I'd say he'll be up around 1 or 2 seconds up, but because of that incident, it's hard to say.
There we go, 40.9, 9/10 up on Nether, so he's done the work there. The question will be, what can the others deliver? So Roadhog in the Quaymar Vipshot car, first of 2 Quaymar Vipshot cars in this field, the only 2-car team in the grid, on the grid, as Roadhog starts his lap.
Roadhog will be looking in these last 2 races of the season to better his best finish of 6th, which he achieved at the last time out. Second race at Zandvoort. He's been most of the time floating around 8th, 9th, 10th. But he's a seasoned veteran. Oh, bit of a slide there. Wonder if that'll hurt his times. Hopefully not.
Yeah, it's a tricky part of the track. There's a little bit of undulation there, especially in that middle sector over the crests. And to the first sector split, Roadhog was 6/100 of a second to the good, ahead of Madbird, which 40.9 is about 4/10 off what he managed in practice. So a steady old lap, but he didn't bin it, and I think he'll be just hoping that a couple of other people don't reach their full potential on their respective laps.
He didn't look too confident through turn 6, and even through turn 7 I noticed he ran off the outside quite a little bit. Looks to have slowed him through the second sector. We'll have to see how the split is as he gets to 2 wheels in the grass again. There seems to be a bit of a common thing. I reckon that'll be happening all over. Well, I guess I'll eat my words. He's up a 10th.
1/10 of a second. It doesn't matter how... Oh, that's a lot of curb. That's a lot of curb, and he just struggles to bring the back in check. I guess that we did hear during the practice session that this racetrack is fairly lenient when it comes to track cuts. I thought that mainly meant on extending the exit of the corner, not so much the mid part of the corner where he cut the curb there. But somehow he's lost a huge amount of time in that final sector, 4/10 of a second. So he ends up slotting in behind Madbird.
He got very wobbly through that last corner, I noticed, so he's lost a lot of the time there because that run onto the main straight is very important because it's a big straight that heads into a very fast corner. So obviously it doesn't matter when you're on the end of a flying lap, but he did lose quite a lot of time on the end there, and he looks like he's got a very loose car, so hopefully he doesn't struggle too much during the race. Here's Goofball Antics now, out to set his lap, and we've seen him produce some great upsets in qualifying this season, haven't we, Stairs?
We certainly have. He's been pole sitter twice in this series, and proved to be quite a qualifying specialist. He started on the front row at least one more time than that, and he's 1/10 of a second up so far through the first sector. And anyone watching, we did mention we do have some technical issues which is causing the video to be quite choppy at the moment. We're hoping to get that resolved in the break between qualifying and the race, so apologies for that. Not sure what's causing that right now, but please do bear with us.
Goofball's looking nice and smooth around this lap so far, which is definitely a virtue to have around the track like this, where a lot of the guys seem to be getting tripped up, although he is getting off the grass in the same spots as everybody else, and almost makes you wonder if they should have built a curb there just to cater for everybody's tendencies to drift off the track like that, because it seems to be a natural occurrence in these sort of cars. He is just a smidge under a 10th up at the second sector, so he is still up, and we'll have to see what he can do in this final sector, because this final sector is the one that's been tripping a few people up.
Yeah, well, we saw Roadhog get it all wrong through that final sequence of corners. Goofball Antics lost a bit of time through the mid part of the lap, but that final sequence of corners looked pretty good for Goofball Antics. So he comes to the line, beeps the horn, and is it going to go under a 40.9? Oh, yes it does! 2/10 of a second. Goofball Antics jumps up into provisional pole position.
Great lap from Goofball there, but if it's just a margin like that, we've still got 6 runners to go, so there's every chance it could be beaten, but who knows? We'll have to see what happens. D-Samaj now. Considered to be a rival, if not a respected competitor against people like Madbird. They've been going toe-to-toe all season. It's been producing some absolutely fantastic racing. I can anticipate they'll qualify about the same, but due to these practice results, Decimage is placed a little bit higher than Madbird, so we'll have to see what's going to happen there.
Yeah, Decimage looking pretty good. Carried an enormous amount of speed through into turn 1 there, and this has looked like a fairly clean sector. So I would expect him to come through that first sector split ahead of Goofball Antics. And no, he's not. Half a tenth down, so Goofball Antics had a pretty good first sector there. A lot of grass on the inside there. Just got a bit of a wobble up mid-corner. Would have had to get out of the throttle. Let's see if that costs him.
Well, his times are still pretty close. Even though he is down, he's only down a little bit. But he could be able to make up a lot of time through these next 2 sectors. But at the same time, he could also lose a lot of time if he makes mistakes. Hopefully that doesn't happen for him. But this track's pretty unpredictable, it seems.
Yes, it is. And, he's a bit late on his turn in there, I think. Missed the apex by a fair old margin. But thankfully for him, it's a fairly short shoot to the next corner, so it shouldn't cost him too much time. Just wrestling the car around the corners. And 3/10 down to the middle sector. This will be pleasing to Madbird. What can he manage through the final sector of the lap?
I'd hazard a guess and say that section between turn 7 and 8 always very wide through turn 10 there, so that's going to cut into his lap times very much. But I'd hazard a guess and say that section between turn 7 and 8, because so many of those guys can't seem to nail turn 7, it's going to create a massive passing opportunity, even though it was already a pretty big one. But turn 8's going to be fantastic now. As he crosses the line, he's 0.344 of a second down, which puts him in provisional 3rd behind Madbird and Goofball, as we now see Sam Smith starting his flying lap.
Importantly for Madbird, he is ahead of Decimage, so that is going to be crucial in the way that battle unfolds, and it's a fair old gap between them, over a tenth of a second, so someone else could conceivably slot in between Madbird and Decimage.
Potentially, yeah, and it could very well be Sam Smith, but at the same time, Sam's been doing very well this season. Had a nice string of podium finishes at the start of the season, and he's resumed that string of podiums in the last 2 races. 3, 3, 3, 3, 3, 3, 3 I'm seeing on my point scoring. He's currently 1/10 up, so he's doing very well so far, and like I said, he's got 7 podiums so far this season. He'll be looking to add on to that tally, possibly get him mixed up with Brenton Foley and even Ziras maybe for a win, if that could happen, because he was getting quite close to in a battle with those two at the last time out in Zandvoort.
Absolutely right. We love watching Sam Smith driving because he likes to wrestle that car around. Maybe not quite as much as Brenton Foley. We've certainly seen some aggressive driving from Brenton Foley of late, which we believe is linked to his car set. A bit of a lock-up for the inside front right of the car there for Sam Smith. So let's see what the time is. It looks good for Sam Smith. He's up by 14 hundredths of a second over Goofball Antics. So he may well find himself on provisional pole in just a few seconds' time.
Big understeer. He's gone off the track like so many of those guys before him, though, at turn 10, so that could cut into his lap time quite a bit. I was just about to say, though, he's normally the guy you'd see sliding around a little bit in the qualifying lap, but I think he understands the importance of keeping it on the straight and narrow around Sydney Motorsport Park because it is so slippery. How much time has he lost on the line? Not much at all, and as a matter of fact, he's ahead by 2.22 of a second. He's currently provisional pole.
There you go. Richie Benno would be proud to see such a gap. So Sam Smith, 140.5, goes to the top of the tree with 7 runners having done their laps. Resist ever on the improve. I think he's been a bit of a favourite of mine throughout this season because he's shown pace, and I'm just waiting for it all to come together for him in a race. And
he's shown some absolutely brilliant pace at some stages, especially Place City Circuit is one I remember fondly when he was duking it out with Ziras through some of the tightest sections of that track and coming up trumps or just staying close behind, not getting into any incidents. It's currently 0.000 at the first sector. It is neck and neck.
Doesn't get any closer than that, does it?
It absolutely doesn't. We'll have to see how he can hold himself together through the rest of this lap. He's looking pretty good so far, but I've got to find some wood around here to touch because the more I say that, the more I find guys are shooting off the side of the road.
Yes, well, we can't be too worried about giving people the commentator's curse as Resist heads down. This is a really, really tricky corner, this turn 6. It's kind of just a little bit off camber. Downhill corner following it, though. And then this turn, sorry, that was turn 7, down to turn 8. So that's a bit of a hairpin. This takes you down towards the final sequence of corners, and he's just marginally slower than Sam Smith through that middle sector. 200ths of a second the difference. There's nothing in it. It all comes down to this final corner.
He's able to keep 2 wheels on the ripple strip there, which is always good. It's better than keeping 4 wheels in the grass, so he's going to be a little bit faster than a few of the guys before him. as he makes his run down the line. That speed is very, very important down this long stretch. As he comes towards the finish line, how's he going to be doing?
Oh, he gets it! He gets it by 0.003 of a second. That is absolutely about as close as it gets. Resistance Sam Smith. Take a bow. That was classy.
That's an unbelievable margin. He's done very well there. He's currently pipped Sam Smith for the provisional pole, but that's definitely subject to change. Birdo is now on his flying lap, and Birdo was fantastic last time out, wasn't he? Challenging for podiums for most of the time, and he's been doing that almost all season, I think. He has had a few podiums already. Quite a few, actually. 5 podiums and a string between Nagaro in the first race of Cadwell, and also a second place at Virginia International Raceway earlier in the season, so he could easily finish on the podium today as well.
Bit of a wiggle through the first sequence of corners, but my goodness gracious me, it doesn't show on the timing screen. 0.2 of a second up on resist, so sometimes you see a wiggle and you think, well, we might have lost a bit of time there, but the reason he might have had a wiggle is because he carried an enormous amount of speed into the corner.
The times are falling and falling and falling, and it makes you wonder if we're going to see a lap in the 139s. I heard a few guys wondering if they were going to get close to that margin. They were very, very close to it in practice. Will someone be able to eclipse it in qualifying? I think yes.
Well, as you mentioned, Birdo, I think bar Foley and Ziras has probably been the class of the field. And I think to be third just to those two is nothing to be ashamed of. Look at the split, 0.6 of a second. Is he going to drop into the 39s? I mean, I feel like it's a foregone conclusion if he doesn't make a mess of this corner. And as I say that, he certainly risks doing that. Very, very aggressive approach over the curbs there.
And he drops a lot of speed for that last turn as well that I don't think he needed to drop. I reckon he lost a little bit of confidence going through there. I think he'll still be up because of that massive margin that he had, but whether or not he'll be into the 139s, he's
in. Yep, he's in by 1/10. Little bit less than, but 39.9, and Birdo goes to the top of the tree.
Brenton Foley out now, and as we were saying earlier, this is a man who likes to get the backside of his car all the way out to the grass if he can. And oftentimes it doesn't really dint his lap times that much. He gets the rear wheel out a little bit on the exit of turn 1, but he's still keeping it together. As he rounds turn 2 and goes through turn 3, that will bring up his first sector split. So this turn 2 is going to be a great passing opportunity, but also turn 3 is where drivers are going to need to watch out. If they have a poor run through turn 2, they're going to get crisscrossed very easily. How's Brenton Foley doing through the first split?
Oh, look
he's
at
up
that.
0.26, doing very well. So if he keeps
this
his pace up, he'll be doing fantastically as he gets towards the end of the lap.
Yeah, it's all of a sudden the big boys have rolled out, and the times sort of we've been sort of chipping away at them gradually. But funny when we get to these big guys who have been challenging for wins and podiums throughout this season, all of a sudden the times come down in chunks, which is kind of the opposite to what we expected to be.
You always expect it to be closer, yeah, but especially when you get to people like Brenton Foley and Ziras, when you look at their race pace compared to the rest of the field, more often than not, oh, he's clattered that tyre barrier. How much is that going to impact his time? Not too much. He's still up 0.571, so that's pretty good for him. But as I was saying, in terms of race pace, it's always Brenton Foley and Ziras who will be streaking away from the field, so it's not too far-fetched to expect the same from him in qualifying. He didn't get too far off the track. It seems like it's almost the norm now to go off the track at turn 10, so hopefully a few of you guys will be able to fix that up before it comes to the race.
Ziras in the background at the start of his, on the end of his outlap is going aggressively, but what's the benchmark going to be set by Foley? It's a 139.1. Thank you very much. 0.8 faster than Birdo. And Ziras, the gauntlet has been laid down for you. Massive
margin. I'm almost willing to wonder if this lap's going to go into the 138s, and I think it very well can.
Well, it almost has to in order to get pole position. We saw that he managed, or that he wasn't able to manage pole position last week when Foley got that particular accolade at Zandvoort. Accolade. So that's not necessarily his strongest suit, even though he has more pole positions than anyone else. But the others seem to, the others have taken a few pole positions off him where he has clearly had the race pace, but maybe not the pace over one lap. But so far, Foley is to the good in the first sector, 0.8 hundredths of a second up on Brenton Foley.
8 hundredths. It's pretty narrow, yeah, so it's kind of negligible. We'll have to see how it's going. It's definitely closer than I thought it would be.
A lot of understeer through these corners. Just you can see full lock almost. A lot of he's taken a lot of liberties with the track limits, which, as we mentioned, the game kind of lets you do. So we've kind of let that one go through to the keeper from a standpoint of it's too hard to police it. So if the game doesn't give you a track cut, it's all good. That's a very, very wide line there through the final corner. He was 3/10 up through the middle sector. He's going to lose it all. He's losing time all the way down this straight. I'm sure he's not going to be on pole position. He's not on pole position, but only 0.004 of a second. What a bold call. But thankfully, I was right.
0.004. That was unbelievable. I wasn't expecting Ziras to be that close. So I thought he'd be down well below Foley's time, but 0.004 of a second, especially with how much time he lost on the run down the straight.
Yeah, chucked it.
Oh my
in the
goodness!
last corner, didn't he?
He really did.
Dirt, and I was surprised, even though he would have lost a bucket load of time through there, he would have lost. I would say half a second in such an incident, because all the way down to the line, you're down on your top speed, but he stuck his foot in it, he kept the thing going, and I mean, he gave himself a shot at pole position. It wasn't good enough in the end. But 0.004 of a second kind of betrays the story of that qualifying session.
It really does, yeah. And it's not the sort of mistake a few guys will be wanting to make during the race because, like you said, that's going to translate to a big loss of time. And even on the last lap, that could result in an overtake for the lead. So it's not something the drivers want to be doing very much, is it?
No, certainly not. So Ziras was kind of going for all or nothing there. I wonder if he'll take a more conservative approach in the race itself.
Makes you wonder if he's just having a bit of fun. Now that he's wrapped up the championship.
Yeah, no pressure. No pressure at all, really, from his point of view. Unless he is thinking about the record of the longest winning streak and extending that. But, of course, he's already extended it by a few races. So I don't think he'll be too concerned about that. I think he just wants to have fun tonight.
Absolutely. But by the same token, if you've got the record of 13 races in a row that you've won, why not go for 15 if you have the chance? I reckon that's what Ziras will be thinking. He's got a pretty good shot of doing it. So, I mean, he's not too close. He's not too far away, rather, in qualifying. Like you said, 0.004 of a second. What an incredible margin for the front row.
It is very, 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 very close indeed. Well, we are now in the warm-up session, which gives us about 10 minutes before the race starts. We're going to have a quick break to try and sort out the technical issues that have been plaguing the stream during that qualifying session, and hopefully on the other side of this quick break we will have rectified the problem completely. No promises, but we will try. Don't go anywhere, and we'll see you very, very shortly.